I am so excited about this upcoming episode, and I know you're going to love it. We are going to be speaking with a powerhouse young woman who is shaking things up in the prairies of Canada. She has such a heart for women and youth, and particularly the Indigenous community. Coming up next, we are speaking with Kaitlyn Cey. She is the pastor of Sisterhood YXE and the director and co-founder of Inspire Our Nation. And we're going to be talking about the current crisis of Indigenous youth and what we need to know and how we can help. Also, she talks about her thoughts on female leadership in ministry and what it's not time for here in Canada. I'm telling you, it's so good. It's going to ignite your heart. You can find it available on all podcast platforms or subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch it there. Please subscribe, and I'll see you on the path.
You're listening to On the Path podcast with Cheryl Nemhard. Follow Cheryl Nemhard on all social media platforms.
Hey guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of On the Path. I am so excited today because when I get my friends in the building, it's just a whole different vibe. And I've got my girl here today, the one and only. She's a powerhouse. This is Kaitlyn Cey, and Kaitlyn Cey is the pastor of Sisterhood YXE, an incredibly thriving organization for women that's doing some intentional work there, bringing awesome freedom and identity to these ladies, and also the co-founder and director of Inspire Our Nation. And we're going to be talking about that ministry in particular and her other one and all of the work she's doing in the Prairies. I want to welcome you, Kaitlyn. Welcome to On the Path, girl.
Thank you so much for having me here, Cheryl. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, so happy. I mean, I just love everything you do. I love your heart. From the moment I met you, there's just been such a strong connection. And I've just tried to serve in any way I can because I just believe in what you're doing. I got to ask you, how did all of this come to be? You are working intentionally with reconciliation, with Indigenous families and youth, with women. How? And you're just on fire for the Prairies and just seeing what God can do there. Tell me how all of that came to be and a little bit about your story.
What a big question. It's like where to start.
Yeah, take your time, unpack it all.
But it's good. That's a good question, and actually kind of does bring a person back to really the basics and the essentials of just our own walk and our walk of obedience and where it takes us. So for me, it's no different than anyone else. When we're following Jesus, it's just a daily following and seeing where he leads. And I think too, something that's important worth mentioning, no matter what it is that we might be stewarding or leading, in a given season, it's always a result or most powerful when it comes out of this life that's Christ-centered. And truly, that's just what I would answer, Cheryl. The more that I have gotten to know the heart of God and just made that high priority in my life, the more that I know where to go next or where to be involved and let him teach me the things that he wants me to teach or to be involved in. Or we were just talking actually before we started a little bit about birthing ministries and the process of that and when God leads us through that. And so really it's just a daily walk of obedience and following him in that. And I love that he has that for every believer, every single believer. And so we look around and we're seeing this right across the nation right now. But I'm excited to be planted in the prairies. You're right. I've got a heartbeat for these provinces. Here is where I grew up. This is home. And there's something about being connected to those prairie roots that I just love.
And Kaitlyn, I feel like you're so, I mean, I've always said that you're so modest. You're one of the most modest women I think I've ever met. When I see the ministries that you run and the size and the impact, for those that just can get a glimpse, I was privileged to speak at one of her conferences for Sisterhood YXE, and there was over 1,000 women in the building, and all hungry, all like desperate for change. And this is just a slim part of what you're doing. You're also working in education and giving them opportunities to grow in that area and get degrees and diplomas. It's incredible, the reach of where all of this is going. And you're so young. Like, hello, somebody. How did all of this come to be? Where did this heart for ministry come from, and at what age?
Good question. You know what? Since I was just a little girl, I've always been drawn to ministry experiences. Bible camp was kind of my first actually exposure just to serving in Christian ministry, and I loved it. Came very naturally to me. It's what gave my heart passion. A small Saskatchewan Bible camp, and just walking every day, abiding with Jesus, learning to hear his voice and walk in obedience. That was huge joy to me then, just as it is now. And it looks a little bit different now, and I've been able to partner with different groups and do events where maybe we have bigger, attention or more attendees, but ultimately the story's the same. And it's never about numbers. It's cultivating that place where we know his voice. But one thing I will say that is so worth acknowledging, and I appreciate, you're seeing kind of from the distance, because Cheryl's been at our events as a speaker. So she comes in for the big impact moments, and then it looks impressive to be a leader. But what you must know is that this is tons of networks. This is Holy Spirit movement networks. And I'm just one in webs of networks of groups of people that are working together, coming together and asking the question, how can we leverage each other's strengths? There's the church, there's parachurch organizations and ministries, there's Indigenous groups, there's non-Indigenous groups, there's multicultural groups coming together. There's different denominations in the prairies coming together saying, how can we make the name of Jesus famous in this time? And when you get those networks coming together, you kind of see these explosions that look, and you see this right where you're at, Cheryl, and I know this is how you also are so collaborative.
Yes.
So I really am one of many, many, many committed leaders to just following Jesus's timing and what he's doing here in ways that he's making himself known.
I love that, Kaitlyn. I love that. And I love your heart. And I'm so glad that you took the time to walk us through, because I really want anyone that's listening to get to know this incredible, incredible woman. And your heart beats also for Indigenous youth quite intensely. I see the work. I see your heart breaks for them. There's such a connection. I want to ask, as we work through what you're doing with Inspire Our Nation, but let's connect the dots. Give me the why behind this moment. Why should we be concerned right now? Why should we feel a sense of urgency around Indigenous youth?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just start with a little bit of even my own story. Why do I personally feel this is so important? And I want to just humbly say that I grew up knowing very little of Indigenous perspectives when it comes to Canadian history. And I did not know very many Indigenous people at all. So I grew up in a wonderful small town, Saskatchewan, but it wasn't real culturally diverse. And I didn't even know, didn't learn about residential schools until I was in university. And as I began to dive into my own education journey, which is so key when it comes to these issues, I recognized my own ignorance and my own blindness. I began to hear other stories. I began to grow that empathy that comes with hearing the story of another and relating. And as I went through that education process, and I want to say it really was a process of deconstructing my own ideas and biases and prejudice. And I do believe I will continue to be going through that process for the rest of my life. It's a lifelong process, but once I started, it's like there's no turning back. I can't not see when I began to just dive into privilege and what that means, and responsibility and allyship and what that looks like. And so it was in university when I was actually taking my education degree that I did quite a bit of education in just in this aspect in anti-racist education and how important that is. And that wasn't even in the context of the church. However, when I did begin my ministry road in the church, it was so clear that education is so tightly tied to the work of the gospel of all people, dignity restored to all people. And as I continue to just make wonderful friends with all kinds of different perspectives and backgrounds, it's just apparent that this reconciliation work is the work of the gospel. And in our nation, it's so important because we just see these discrepancies that aren't right. And we need to be speaking about working towards justice. And and that takes intention on every side. So that's sort of where my heart comes in. But I mean, ultimately, I just think that when we recognize just even the statistics and what our Indigenous youth are facing, we just need to be real about that, hear that, see that, and be talking about that and what we can do together to work for positive change.
I love that. I love that. And what is Inspire? Tell us about Inspire Our Nation and what you all are doing to make a difference in their lives.
Sure. So, Inspire Nation is a youth ministry. I'm loving directing. I work with an incredible team, just dynamic leaders. And we work to inspire youth so they can overcome struggles and be influencers, really to build leadership so that they can influence their world for Jesus. And a high priority of our ministry is reconciliation work. We love bringing different perspectives to the table and empowering youth to have a voice, to have opinions. So we're really big on identity in Christ and purpose, propelling youth into their God-given purpose that is found in the gospel, in knowing Jesus and having him make the path forward. And so bringing these youth together just to be connected, first of all, but then to be growing together in faith, it's a powerful thing. What happens when you connect any people group or any group of people, there's a reason that group becomes so empowered throughout history. You see that. And so for our youth in this nation right now, to connect Christian youth who are passionate about the topic of reconciliation, no matter what their racial background is, that's a mighty thing that we're doing for our country right now.
I love that. And when we were speaking earlier, there's a real 911 going on in the area of our Indigenous youth. We've talked about the mental health crisis that's happening right now. There's addictions that kids are either directly involved in or they're children of parents and families. And there's a lot of struggles that they're working through outside of the regular everyday struggles that teenagers work through. And you were giving me a stat about the Kids Help line that I thought was just so profound. Could you share that?
Yeah, well, just the fact that between 2019, between 2019 and 2020, we saw that the number of calls made on the Kids Helpline doubled
Wow.
in Canada. And so those aren't kids that are, just kind of thinking about speaking to someone or, just beginning to feel down. These are kids that are saying, I'm in crisis and I need help. And I don't know what to do. And I'm so glad for the ones that are brave enough to pick up the phone and make that phone call and who have that number in their hands. Someone has cared enough about them to get them that resource, but doubled. I do think that that's connected to COVID, but I know in the communities that we work closely in, and one in particular, suicide rates are just skyrocketing. And that's not just youth. They're seeing that in older populations as well. But it's definitely a real thing that we need to keep talking about. We need to keep partnering in strategic ways to be that positive change.
And I had the privilege of being part of one of your Inspire Our Nations conferences. And what I love the most about that conference wasn't just the incredible work you were doing with Indigenous youth and other nationalities and bringing reconciliation and talking about anti-racism, but you had separate workshops for parents. You had separate workshops for youth leaders and for all of those that were in contact with youth and making a difference. And so you're equipping not just the youth themselves, but anyone that has a heart for youth. I love that.
Yeah, that's I think that's such an important aspect of sustainable change is that it's community.
Yeah,
It's generational,
absolutely.
and it doesn't come from one really sharp focus on one tiny little group. And I
Right.
think God has made us to flourish in diverse community. And when we think about our communities and bringing change to our communities, as as a whole, we need to be thinking about bringing together those different supports
Absolutely.
so that there's a team aspect between parents and families and extra supports and mental health supports and school teachers and principals. And there's lots of that good work happening, but that's such a key part of really bringing about that positive change.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And listen, I want to switch gears just a little bit because we've been talking about the pandemic, but let's drive it home for you. 2020 and 2021 have been an absolute devastating season for so many people, from global pandemics, economic downturns, loss of job, closing of businesses, just left, right, and center. There's been a lot of loss. As you said too, thoughts of suicide or acts of suicide have increased. It's just been a hard time. How are you doing in all of this? Is the first question. How are you doing in all of this? And what are you seeing as a direct impact of COVID in the ministries that you're serving, both women and youth?
Great. Yeah, good question. So I guess the first question, how am I doing? I would just say one thing that I'm so grateful for, and I recognize this is huge, Cheryl. It's the people that you surround yourself with, and truly, I feel connected to so many dynamic leaders. And when I say dynamic, I don't even necessarily mean, again, it's not about these big things or big initiatives. It is leaders who are dialed in to the voice of God and willing to adapt. And so there's sort of this culture, and you're one of them, Cheryl. So I just thank you. You're such an example to me. You are an incredible
Oh,
leader to many. You're a wild connector. How often you're just texting people, you got to
yeah,
meet this person.
yeah, yeah,
And but so many people who are staying possibility focused,
yeah.
possibility centered. I'm so grateful for Gather Women. There's a lot of women
Mhm.
in that network
Yeah.
and just connections. And that's sort of just the way that many are deciding to think. And so I feel like because of those awesome voices in this nation that I've been so privileged to be connected to, actually mostly through Gather Women, that's sort of just the default way of thinking. Is what's the advantage? What's the unique opportunity? What's the possibility for the gospel in
Mm,
this time in our nation? Let's be forward thinking. How can we pivot? And so it's actually that way. It's been fun. It's been fun to stay connected, to support one another through this season, and to see the new creative opportunities that God is creating that would
mm,
not be possible. And so
mhm,
then your second question, direct impact on Inspire Our Nation or Sisterhood YXC, I would say increased opportunity to connect. And a big thing for us here on the prairies is seeing more and more people, churches, organizations that are excited, willing, ready to be more connected, especially when it comes to online opportunities. Because when we're experiencing this isolation, we're learning because we have to learn.
right.
It's like we can't stay and do things the way they've always been done. We need each other's support. So I think we're seeing this right across the nation where there might have been walls built up or maybe a resistance to work together.
Mhm.
And even in myself, it's like I need others.
Yeah.
Can we come together
So
and talk
good.
about how we're navigating this? And so there's these new relationships, strengthened relationships formed, and especially again when the goal is together, how can we make Jesus's name great here?
Love it.
So I would just say I'm seeing a lot of really positive things. But the other thing I want to voice, just again being realistic, because it's not all rainbows and butterflies for any of us.
Right.
People are hurting.
Yeah.
People are hurting. People are feeling
Yeah.
the impacts of isolation, confusion,
Yeah.
just this ongoing struggle. People are mourning life that was.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to acknowledge that's where people are at,
Mhm.
and how can we best be serving people during this time, not just with, yes, absolutely we want to be bringing the hope of Jesus, but those tangible needs he cares about too. So
Mm.
tangibly, what do people need right now to
Mhm.
be able to flourish in this season? So
Yeah.
yeah, all of that is mixed in this kind of COVID bag.
Yeah, no, that's so, so good. And you've navigated for so long. Like you said, we tend to sometimes be in silos and working and doing ministry in isolation, but there is such strength in numbers and such strength in unity. And I love that you are breaking down the walls that divide and linking arms, literally, with women and men across this nation, and just working together. That's the only way, like you said, that we're going to see sustainable change. I was thinking about you as a female faith leader in this nation, and you've been one for a long time. And for many years, you were probably the youngest, always in the room of other ministers and pastors. What's your hope? Do you see a good future? Are there still challenges in being a leader, a female leader in ministry? Have we made strides in that area? And what would you tell to say to a woman who's looking to step into ministry in a significant way?
Amazing. I think we absolutely have made strides. We are making strides. I am thankful for my journey as a female leader in the church at this time. I've had great experiences with really wonderful mentors and teachers and supportive voices. But it's also a reality that there is a lack of representation for all kinds of reasons, and so we want to continue to
Yeah,
talk about this issue.
yeah,
And this is another polarizing issue, can be, and we've got enough of those on the table. But that doesn't mean we should be silent about them. It
yeah.
means we should keep setting
Agreed.
the table of peace. We should keep setting a table of peace to talk
Agreed.
about these things, just to learn, just to have discussion groups, because there's
Hmm.
so many different opinions and different denominations about this issue. And the number one is about making Jesus known and his gospel, and walking in humble obedience together as we're all on this learning journey.
Hmm.
So if we can keep setting those tables, I'm going to be really happy. And if we can keep training ourselves to keep love at the forefront, and I don't just mean those people on a certain side. I mean, all of us who
Hmm.
have thoughts and opinions. That if we can keep coming, then we can bring to come together in unity, and we can still have diversity. But I would just say to young women to keep your eyes out for those examples. There are out there. There are lots of women in ministry in Canada right now, and if you feel that call, if you feel a little sense of I'm called to that, get to know them, reach out, be brave, because I think seeing others in those roles and
Hmm.
that it is happening, and even maybe getting to know them a bit, they'll be open to getting to know you.
Hmm.
And so we do need to keep seeing those women rise up in the church, because that, if we don't have them, if we don't have their perspectives and their voices when they're called, if there are barriers or if they just think there's no place for them,
Yeah,
that's going to hinder the work of God in our nation right now. And
agreed.
that's most important, is that God has assignments. He's got a mission in this country, and he needs his people working together, and he needs them working at full capacity, not
Hmm.
held back, not encumbered.
Hmm.
And so for a lot of women, there are just those challenges because of the underrepresentation and sometimes confusion around, is this okay? And so, yeah, I'm happy to keep setting those tables and keep sitting at those tables of discussion.
So, so, so good. And how many years would you say you've been in a leadership type position, just in general in ministry? This is like
Well,
what,
you know what I
10,
love
20,
is
almost 20
so
years?
ministry.
Hmm.
It really is all things. Like
Yeah,
every one of us as believers,
yeah,
we are in ministry, no matter where we are, and no matter whether it's a season, if we're working in a church or we're working at a
exactly.
school or we're working at the restaurant, we are every day in ministry
Yeah.
and doing the work of the ministry. And no one is, more lofty than the other. So I always kind of start with that because um, I guess I just feel the different job roles I've had. I've always felt I'm in ministry today. I'm here to make Jesus known. I'm here to obey what his still small voice is saying.
Mhm.
However, I've been on staff at an amazing Pentecostal church here in Saskatoon called Elam Church for the past 5 years as the pastor of women's ministries. And yeah, very, very good experience, and have learned so much from wonderful leaders, and just
Excellent.
the network of this particular denomination I've been blessed to be a part of, but I know that it's one of many
Hmm.
wonderful churches right across the country.
Hmm. And you've got an incredible campaign coming up for Inspire Our Nation, and you're doing incredible work. What is this new push that you're doing? Tell us about it and how we can be a part.
Sure. So we're about to launch a campaign. It's called the Inspire Life Youth Campaign. It's really founded on John 10:10. Jesus came to give us life and life to the full,
Hmm.
and providing opportunities for youth in Canada really to get connected. And discipleship training is part of what we're doing this summer. So we're doing some Inspire Life celebration days right on communities here this summer. And we're really excited about that. We're partnering with a few different organizations, really to tell testimony from youth right up to grandpa and grandmas about what is Jesus doing. And we want to hear from different races. And we're really excited about that. So that's happening on a few Indigenous communities, involving some of our youth leading in some ways for that. So we're excited about that. And also our online camps are all about connecting youth who might, some of them are in very remote regions, and their way of connection is online. And so they're loving, as we're running some of our online programming, getting to know youth from different provinces with very different experiences. And it just can open up your world when you're sitting at home. That is the
It's
amazing thing
incredible.
about technology, right? And
Hmm.
so this campaign, we are looking to raise funds to work towards our goal of $100,000 by December. And running this online programming, we're running our box campaign where we're sending boxes full of all kinds of inspiring, life-giving items and goodies and resources to every youth who participates in our
Wow.
programming.
So good.
Also offering suicide prevention training with leaders and youth from different communities,
That's
and
excellent.
just continuing to partner and to do the work that God puts before us. So
Hmm.
part of our campaign, we're actually asking people to stand with us. I reached out to Cheryl about
Yes.
this, and that's when
Yeah.
she said, would you come on the
Yeah. You got
podcast?"
to come
I said, "I
on.
sure will." So one thing we're asking anybody to participate with us in is actually just drawing a little heartbeat sign um, on your hand. I don't know if you can see that, but
Yeah.
there we go. And just posting and hashtag Inspire Our Nation. Really Inspire Life Youth Campaign is the hashtag we're asking people to use, and just to add a statement of their own of inspiration for youth. Cheryl, I'd be curious if you had, I'm just going to put you on the spot for a minute,
Yes. Please.
one statement for youth across Canada right now. If you had one statement to throw hope at them, what would you say?
Easy. Your voice matters and makes a difference.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
let
And
them
we
know.
actually, you brought that message,
Hmm.
a dynamic message. So Cheryl has spoken at our Sisterhood event in front of 1,000, and also our youth. Now you've come twice to speak
Yeah. Well,
with our youth and
that's that's just the tip
left
of the
such
hat.
impact.
I plan to come back many more times.
We love
I
you.
need to
We've
be
got a
there.
little obsession going on here in the
Me
prairies.
too. Me too.
But yeah, we've been so grateful for that. And that's the very voice that you bring, is to unlock the voices, the silenced and the hurting. And so thank you so much, because you've done powerful work with us.
Oh, my honor. Actually, it's the least I can do. And I love this campaign. Inspire Life Youth Campaign. Is that the full hashtag?
That's right.
Okay.
Inspire life.
All
Yeah.
right, guys. So we got this one. Inspire Life Youth Campaign. Draw a heartbeat, just the pulse of a heartbeat across your hand, post it, and give an inspiring word to a young person who's in need. And please, please consider making a donation to Inspire Our Nation. I always say this: we cannot reach everyone at all times, and many of us are not in a position to be able to be in the front lines, in reserves, helping Indigenous youth, just meeting the needs. But your donation is an extension. You can reach through your donation, and so right on your couch, you could be affecting the lives of Indigenous women, of different races, helping reconciliation, suicide prevention, education, empowerment, doing all of that in the comfort of your home just by donating. So, would you consider doing that? How can we make a donation and support you financially? Can you give us all the info?
Yeah, sure. You can visit us at www.inspireournation.com. Giving options are available there. If you want to simply sponsor a box, you can see tangibly what it is that you're giving to. A minimum donation of $50 puts a box in a youth's hands who's participating with us and will get that discipleship mentorship training. Or if you want to specifically send a youth to camp or send a youth to one of our mentorship programs, those options are there specifically. Or if you just want to give a general one-time donation at our website, we would be more than happy to receive that. We're very thankful. And a huge thing, and Cheryl, again, you teach me a lot about this, is prayer. We just invite you, if you want to keep up with our prayer newsletters, we would ask you, and there's so many wonderful ministries that, you could be supporting right now. So power to you if you've already got your list. We're all working together in this country. So this is good. But the prayer being so key and foundational, actually, to be the birthplace of whatever ministry God would bring about out of that. So I just invite your prayers as we head into the summer of ministry this year. So and we're glad to be partnering with many other powerful ministries too.
So good. And one more time, just for us, the website one more time, please.
Yeah, that's www.inspireournation.com.
And on Instagram, where can we find you and Inspire? Give us all the handles.
Sure. Well, Inspire, we're at Inspire Our Nation Official. So at Inspire Our Nation Official. And if you want to find me, I'm at Kaitlyn Cey, or my devotional material is at Kaitlyn.Cey.
Love it. Kaitlyn, I'm so thankful for you and all you're doing out in the prairies and the provinces that truly need the love of God and reaching the most vulnerable, marginalized, even some isolated, far off reserves. As you said, it's like just the hand of God is reaching, and we're so, so excited to see it. I got one last question for you. It's a surprise. I did not tell you. Because I know you're good for it. But I would love, in light of the work you're doing with women and with youth, just think about all of those hearts and finish this sentence for me. It's time for what? It's time for what? So say it's time for, and then let it rip.
Yeah, it's time for change. It's just time for change. The fact is, our world is changing already, whether we like it or not. And, some people say people don't like change, but I don't agree with that. I think that people don't like staying stuck. I think people don't like being stagnant. And I think that if we're not moving forward, then we're moving backwards. And so it's time for change. The world is changing. And if we embrace it, even if it is uncomfortable, and even if it takes us to some scary places, we might have to re-examine some things we thought we knew or we were certain of. God is the author of change. And Jesus himself says that our whole purpose on earth is to be changing, to become more in the likeness of Jesus. And so truly, I'm saying this to myself, embrace the change. It's uncomfortable, but hold on to it, dive into it, know that God will not let you go. And the more of us that are doing that, we can support each other through it, because there's challenges and there's always resistance with growth. But let's keep pressing into the hard parts and doing the things that God's calling us to do. And Cheryl, I just have to say again, you're the pioneer here. You are a big example for us right across this nation. You've done it in your life in some really brave ways, and I'm so appreciative to be connected to you. So thank you so much for having me.
Girl, I did not expect any of that.
I know. She didn't pay me to say that, I promise. But it's just the truth. And if you know Cheryl, you know how true that is.
Thank you, my sister. I love you so much. Okay, we're gonna reverse it. I got one more. I'm coming at you with the left and the right here. We're gonna go down a little bit deeper. What is it not time for? What is it not time for, Kaitlyn?
Great question. It is not time for ego. It is not time for ego. There is so much polarizing discussion right now happening in our nation, in our church, in our schools, in our families, in our organizations. So much opportunity for dissension, division, even further isolation than what we're already experiencing. It is not time for ego. It's time for love. It's time for love to be the filter and the first priority. And for us to be just looking outward. It's time to not get defensive about our opinions. It's time to be able to partner even when we are different, to be okay with distinctions, but still come together for what's important. And I'm speaking to myself. It's time for the ego to die and how I think things need to be done. And just a surrendered time to God and the Holy Spirit and what He wants to be doing right now.
So good. Before we go, we're wrapping up. And for those that are on the path that want to do intentional ministry and have a heartbeat for women, have a heartbeat for youth, for those that are at risk and marginalized, but don't know where to begin, don't even know how to start, any quick advice for them on how to begin ministry?
Yeah, two things. Great question. First thing, just start.
Right.
Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for the perfect
That's good.
opportunity.
That's good.
I would say if you're not serving somewhere and you've got kind of a burden to get involved, just start somewhere, even if it's really small, if it's at the old folks home, if it's making phone calls, just start somewhere. Just say, God, I'm willing, take a step. But the second thing is really just listening to your own heart and paying attention. What is it when it comes to injustice that burns inside of you? Because we do all have a calling. God's got a purpose for you. He's specific about it. And part of it is what you feel burdened about. So when you look around at the world and you see in Canada right now in your space, there's injustice. Pay attention to that and let it grow. You have to kind of even feed it. Put yourself in the places where you're learning more about it, where you get maybe more educated, listen to podcasts, read books. And the more that you dive into that topic, I just believe the bigger that heart is going to grow. And so as the heart grows, the opportunities grow. And I think just start.
So good. Kaitlyn, as always, I already knew when I called your number, girl, I just knew it was going to be such an uplifting, encouraging, but igniting conversation. And it was. And I need to have you back because we haven't even scratched the surface like at all. But thank you so much for being on the path today, girl.
Thank you so much for having me, Cheryl. I think this is an incredible initiative. I'm also excited to be checking out your soul food podcast.
Listen.
So I'm going to be doing that right after this because I just learned about that. And as we're all going about this, ministry and going, it's like we need that quiet space. So good on you.
Need it. Yes.
As you said, that's your pastor heart coming through, and I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah, Soul Food to Go podcast. Just a reminder for anyone that's listening. Thank you, Kaitlyn. I would have never mentioned it. Just an incredible way to reconnect with God in a new and fresh way. And maybe you need a little bit of a refresh, and that's okay. It's been a couple of hard years. And so if you don't have a lot of bandwidth or a lot of brain space, that's okay too. Everything is anywhere from 6 to 7.5 minutes. It's scripture, affirmations, just to help you reframe your day. Thank you for letting me do that plug, Kaitlyn, on your podcast.
Look, I'm going to go there because we all need that as we're going about the ministry, right?
You're the best. Oh, Kaitlyn, I love you. You got to come back. Thank you for being on the path, girl.
Thanks, Cheryl. Take care.
I want to take a minute to thank my girl, Kaitlyn, for coming on the path and sharing with us the incredible work that's being done out in the prairies here in Canada. And wherever you are listening to this, just know that you can make change in your own community. I got to ask you a challenging question. What are you doing in the lives of young people in your community? Are you doing anything to pour into the next generation? Are you doing anything to make a difference? It really is so important that we take intentional moments for them. They are looking for guidance, looking for wisdom, looking for direction from us. And we have an opportunity, I would say actually a privilege, to be able to shape them into the leaders that they will become. And so I encourage you, think about big and small ways that you can help a young person in your life that is trying to come out of a hard situation, to let go of some things that are standing in their way, or maybe to make the next steps as they're evolving into their adulthood and into their calling. There is so much that we can do. And I think sometimes we overthink it and we make it too big when it's really just so simple. I just pray that you listen to that heart that is pricking for you to serve in intentional ways. And I can't wait to hear your feedback. I want to hear your stories. And I invite you guys to DM me at Cheryl Nemhard. Send me an email on the Path Podcast at gmail.com. Why don't you send me an email? If you even want to be featured on the podcast, you've got a story to tell, I'd love to hear from you too. In the meantime, guys, would you please think about subscribing, making a review, rating my podcast? That would help this whole movement to push forward and to get in front of more eyes and ears. Until then, guys, let's make a difference. Let's keep living. Let's keep learning. Let's keep loving, and let's keep serving, guys. I'll see you on the path.
Thanks for listening. Please like, download, and subscribe. This has been an Exusia Media production.